Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, a design-build company committed to remodeling the right way. Visit callmosby.com to get project inspiration for any room of your house.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Wednesday, February 19th. I'm Wayne Pratt. Ahead, researchers say psychedelic substances like LSD and certain mushrooms can treat mental illness, but some St. Louisans are using them to seek enlightenment.
It's like, look at, you're alive. It's like just infinite love like you've never felt before in your entire life.
Reporter Nancy Fowler talks with St. Louis health professionals about psychedelics as medicine and others experimenting with the substances. First, the headlines. Two giant agricultural companies are planning to appeal a jury verdict in a dicamba trial in Cape Girardeau. Jurors found Monsanto and BASF responsible for dicamba damage in Missouri's Boot Heel and awarded $265 million in damages to a peach farmer. As St. Louis Public Radio's Corinne Ruff reports, some say the verdict sets a precedent for similar lawsuits.
Lawyers representing Bader Farms are celebrating their win in federal court as a significant victory for farmers across the Midwest whose crops have been damaged by drifting herbicides. Bev Randall says the Baders pursued their suit with hopes of helping other farmers too.
They felt like it was necessary because of what it means to farmers everywhere. This was just wrong.
But Chris Hone, an attorney representing Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, says the company has a strong case for appeal. He says a soil fungus caused the damage, not dicamba.
It was never shown that our products had anything to do with what's going on at Bader Farms.
More than 100 farmers have filed similar lawsuits. Some are expected to go to trial in Cape Girardeau later this year. I'm Corinne Ruff, St. Louis Public Radio.
A new contract to provide phone services, email, and tablets to inmates in the St. Louis County Jail is on hold. A losing vendor says the bidding was not conducted fairly. Inmate Calling Solutions President Tim McAteer says his firm was led to believe the county was not interested in tablets. He was surprised to see the winning company included the devices in its response to a request for proposals.
Regarding tablets, they were not included in the RFP. They weren't even mentioned. If the county wanted tablets, the county could have and should have included them in their RFP.
Council Chairwoman Lisa Clancy says she is reviewing the bidding process but has not found any wrongdoing. Scott Air Force Base will begin testing nearby wells for possible toxic chemicals. St. Louis Public Radio's Eric Schmid reports the contamination likely comes from firefighting foam.
Polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, are really good at putting out jet fuel fires, and they're in many firefighting foams at airports. These substances are also linked to cancer, birth defects, and other health problems. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers found 7 spots at Scott Air Force Base where PFAS saturated the ground. Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin says there is evidence groundwater was contaminated.
It was not the drinking water source for this base or any community nearby. It was in a groundwater situation and a fear that as it ran off, it would contaminate wells that had been dug either on the base or nearby.
Durbin says the region's drinking water is safe because it does not come from wells. Reporting from Scott Air Force Base, I'm Eric Schmid, St. Louis Public Radio.
Former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich is out of prison. His political corruption sentence was commuted yesterday by President Donald Trump. Blagojevich served more than 8 years of a 14-year sentence. The president says the punishment was excessive. Psychedelic substances like LSD and magic mushrooms are often seen as a vestige of hippie culture or a dangerous threat. But a growing number of studies suggest they can treat depression, addiction, and other mental health concerns. Some St. Louis professionals agree. Others, who have been experimenting on their own, say they have seen benefits from those illegal substances. Reporter Nancy Fowler has the story.
In the 1960s, psychedelics were part of a culture that questioned authority and sought deeper meaning. At that time, St. Louisan Mary Sinewald could find little meaning in her own life and was profoundly depressed. Therapy and medication weren't working, and she decided to try LSD.
The peak experience was I was climbing a mountain, and I could look out for seemingly hundreds of miles, and the whole universe, the whole world was just shimmering with a life from within.
After several psychedelic trips, her depression began to lift. She went on to become a psychotherapist, and at the age of 76, earned a certification from a California institute to provide psychedelic-assisted therapies.
And I'd be particularly interested to work with people from low income who wouldn't have the money.
It's not a service that she or anyone can provide here, not yet. But a few cities have decriminalized plant psychedelics, and efforts are underway in others. Meanwhile, many people in St. Louis are conducting their own personal research.
It's it's an undescribable experience.
Like Dan Connor, co-founder and former drummer and manager of the popular local band Miss Jubilee. He tried psilocybin mushrooms a few years ago, not long after he turned 40, to help with stress. Now he trips every month or so. Connor invited me to witness and record his next experience.
Hey.
Good to see you. Are you ready?
I am ready.
So I took 2 tabs of LSD, so like probably around 400 to 500 micrograms.
Is that a lot?
Yeah. That's a good amount. Feels good.
Connor turns on some music, lies down on the couch with an eye mask, and describes what's in his mind.
All these geometric patterns, like, it's moving. It's not just random,
Look like a kaleidoscope?
Yeah, but not like normal. I mean, imagine like a more infinitely complex and wondrous kaleidoscope.
A few hours in, Connor stops talking. When he speaks again, it's very emotional.
It's like this entity is sort of like saying, like, love's everywhere, like like it's trying to say, can I not make it more obvious? Like, look at, you're alive. This, like, just infinite love like you've never felt before in your entire life.
Medical professionals don't recommend that people take psychedelics on their own.
I'd rather err on the side of caution.
Dr. Fred Rotnick is director of community medicine at St. Louis University. He follows closely the psilocybin studies at Johns Hopkins University, where therapists work with participants before they ingest the psychedelic, during their 6 to 8 hour trip, and after the experience.
It allows almost a reframing of an individual to look at his or her life situation. It slows things down so you can almost look at yourself from a dissociated state. So I see that these are very useful and under-investigated resource for us moving forward.
Researchers say up to 30% of people who try psychedelics have a bad experience. That happened to 32-year-old Josh Masterson of St. Louis when he was a freshman in college and tried some mushrooms with friends in the woods. Everything was fine until they got back to the dorm.
So I get this thought in my head that I'm going to die in 5 minutes. So I start running up and down my hallway asking for help. Just yelling, like, for an ambulance, like, can anybody help me? This is an emergency situation.
A friend helped him calm down, and Masterson thought he was done with psychedelics. But a year later, he tried them again, wanting to re-experience the bond he'd felt with nature.
It was incredibly sacred and special. I felt so uplifted.
Researchers say that even a bad trip can provide valuable information for a client and their therapist to work on. While psychedelic-assisted therapies are not widely available outside of clinical trials, patients should be able to access them within 10 years. For St. Louis Public Radio, I'm Nancy Fowler.
Our David Casares edited that report. Shula Newman is the executive editor of St. Louis Public Radio. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Wayne Pratt from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom. This has been The Gateway.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.